many of us are attracted to public service because of the meaning and the purpose. What can you take in your federal job into the private sector?
Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with Susan Hawk Schneider about life after public service. Now, this public service could be federal, state, county, city, really any level. And I think that you found, Susan, a little bit like me, that retiring from public service feels or maybe becomes a little bit different than the corporate world. So tell me a little bit about where you worked, how long you worked there, things like that.
Oh, I worked 41 years in the Federal Department of Health and Human Services in a few different parts. I started out as a medical librarian at the National Library of Medicine. Then I went to the Office on Smoking and Health, and then to the National Center for Health Statistics,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I went into the training and organizational development world and coaching as well.
Yeah, excellent. And of course, while you were working, you probably had this idea of what retirement might look like. Try to think back. How did you envision your retirement while you're working? And then let's compare it. How did it actually play out for you?
Yeah, one of those great questions. Thank you, Jeremy. I had some ideas about what I would do. I took the time in the evenings and weekends to take the coaching certification, right? That was very interesting because we met as a cohort. It was in Santa Barbara Fielding Graduate University, and then COVID hits, but we had at least met face to face. There were about 20 of us in the cohort. So I did that, and it was very intensive. I thought coaching would be easier than it actually was for me then. So I had this idea of coaching, certainly for first-time supervisors in the federal system, since that was my experience. It's hard being a supervisor in the federal system, and I thought that I would do that kind of coaching, um, and perhaps some workshops and so on. So that was my vision going into retirement, and that was last April. So it's been about a year and a half.
Okay.
So now I am doing some of what I had envisioned and some that came about, in a just, I guess, serendipity, really. I wound up finding the Retirement Coaches Association, which is how you and I found each other. But that wasn't my original thought, right? And then I also, because I knew the research about well-being after 60, 70, and so on, and that social networks were really important. So I set about consciously developing a social network because I lost pretty much all of the social network I had at work. It's just they're really different lives, different realms, right? And so I went and took some art classes, right? Love collage, love multimedia, mixed media, and so on, and found some lovely friends there. And then when I was attending an organizational development presentation, there was a presentation by Andrea Watts of Unglue You. She's based in London and she's fantastic. And she uses collage as a creative coaching technique. So you can imagine how excited I was when I learned that all of a sudden, to me, these two things that I really cared about were really coming back together. And, when you think about it, it makes sense because images are so powerful. So if you use images to envision your life after retirement, very, very powerful.
Yeah, it's so great that you share that. I've heard a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? I imagine, of course, I'm a math-oriented retirement planner, I think maybe a picture you create is worth 1,000 equations. I got to figure out the exact term for that, because it is interesting, right? And that's, I
Yeah,
think, why a lot of people reach out to someone like myself, is that maybe they've got a bit of a problem envisioning the money part. Will it work out for me?
right.
And or that's what they think that the advisor is supposed to help out with. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, that a lot of times envisioning the actual retirement of itself is the main issue. It's almost like the math might come in to fill in the voids if you know exactly which way you want to go. And of course, picturing your retirement, what could be more pictureful than an actual collage? Now, how would you take someone through this, or have them go through the idea of collaging their retirement?
One way is to pair with a financial planner, right? Who is taking care of all that, the financial aspects, which in my experience are quite well cared for. There are many people who want to help feds with their financial plans, right? But not so many of us who are interested in retirement coaching that's not financial. So the classic way that Andrea of Unglue You goes about this process is that you have an intention in mind. Perhaps I'd like to see what my time and days and weeks might be like after I retire. And you go through um, a magazine, right? You have a collection of magazines and you go through at a certain slow-ish pace, about like this, right? And with that thought in mind about what you'd like your retirement to be, you'll see images that speak to you, right? You relate to, and you rip out those pages and set them aside. So after you've gone through some magazines, say 5 or so, very different kind of magazine, not all fashion, for example, um, found out I really turns out I really like Popular Mechanics magazine. Who knew, right?
Sure.
Anyway, anyway, then you turn to those pages that you ripped out, and then you assemble a collage that means something to you. It's some people are familiar with a vision board. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like that. The images are more integrated, right? And then you talk about it. You in a group, say, perhaps there's a small group in person, virtual works as well. And there's also an option of doing that digitally. I did it, with the print magazines because, I love print. I love, I love books. I love all that kind of stuff, right? I love
Mm-hmm.
collage, right? So there are things that come out about what you'd like to become, what you'd like to do when you work in that kind of medium. It essentially accesses the unconscious without getting too heavy about it because it's still really fun.
Yeah, I can tell how much fun you've been having with it through
Yeah,
yourself and helping
right,
others do it. It's interesting too, because you got this theory of the left brain, right brain,
right.
and let me get this right. I think the left brain is the more analytical, the right brain's the more creative side. Does that sound? Did I get that right? I think so.
I think that's right
Close
too.
enough. Either way, there's two sides of it, right?
Either way, it seems there are two sides, and
Yeah.
at actually different times that creativity works better than
Mm-hmm.
analytical when because we all have both. We have some of
Right.
both.
We all have both, and a
Yeah,
lot of people are maybe more tilted one way towards another. I see a lot of people walk in with their spreadsheets, and they're so proud of their spreadsheets of, okay, I've
right,
planned it out exactly how the
right,
numbers are going to work. And I think this idea of collage is opening up the world of
right,
retirement planning to others that maybe have
right,
the creative, right brain side going on. Of, okay,
right,
I don't have the spreadsheet of how retirement is going to look, but I have literal pictures
right,
of how it should look, and how do
right.
we maybe make that happen? And that's great too. I like that you mentioned the idea that you're sharing, talking out the collage, because of course things might be meaningful to you, but until you
Mhm.
talk it out and it's almost like teaching. If you can explain it to others, it's more meaningful on the inside. You learn more of
Exactly.
it. And so I think talking it out in a group, which is how humans are kind of designed to work anyways, is to talk things out and interact in a group
Right.
is a helpful way to go about that. But you mentioned something to me real quick before we started, and I see why you said it now, because you mentioned you were a librarian. So I'm making some
Uh-huh.
assumptions here. But
Yes,
you
it's
said you were
okay. I'll
you
make
see,
assumptions about those Excel sheets too.
that's it. I good. Yes, I have an imagination that as a librarian, the stereotype is maybe more insular and focused on books and things like that. But you said earlier, while we were talking, that you were intentional about developing a social network for yourself by doing the art classes. Tell me, why were you intentional about that? And what have you seen with others that are maybe um, more introverted?
Ah, it, it's a great thing to be talking about and considering. Thank you. The studies about well-being and thriving and so on often have, say, 8 facets, right? One of them is financial, another is health, and so on. Um, One of the ones that I found that I was scoring low on, right, was the social network. I thought, well, yeah, I don't have much. And that was even when I was working, right? And I thought, of course, right? Especially once I'm retired. So I reached out to women in the neighborhood, right? Various ages, and also took the art class and did other things like I've gone to a couple book clubs. That's kind of classic and makes sense with the librarian and so on. But people people do need people. We do need social interaction. I was just reading a book. What is it? It's right over there. The Origins of Creativity by Edward O. Wilson, the sociobiology guy, the guy who studied ants for like decades, right? Social insects, right? And then he goes on to chimps and inevitably to we humans, right? And we're really quite the social animal, right? And to, and anything that we do, I think we need to do consciously. So, yeah, I set about to make friends, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it just is just funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Well, I think the reason why you need to consciously go out and make friends, you got twofold, and you realize this ahead of time that I get all the social interactions at work. You remove the work, that's removing a lot of social interactions. But a fear, and I think a reality too, is just the older we get, the less of us there are around, and
right,
that
right,
can be a big detriment. That we're social beings, but the social network is decreasing. So going out and making sure that you have that and you actively promote your own social well-being is helpful thing. Now, you are out near the DC area. You've got a lot
hmm
of federal workers out there near
hmm
DC, I assume. And that's where
hmm
you got into the idea of helping some people in the public service retire. But where have you seen retirement go wrong for some people you've run across that are public servants to begin with?
right. Right. Public service, I like I've said, I think it's a little different because many of us are attracted to public service because of the meaning and the purpose. It may have been that, in my case, medical librarianship, the top of that was the National Library of Medicine. Although there are a few hospital and university libraries that might argue with that, but pretty much that was the top of the pile, at least when I started. So some of it's because of the professional aspirations. That's the place to work, State Department for, others and so on, whatever your profession is. Another would be that we're attracted because of the mission, right? The Environmental Protection Agency, the National Park Service, for example, that the mission is what draws us, right? And those are my two sort of theories or frameworks for why people select public service. Of course, some of us are very intent on the stability and so on, and it is stable. I mean, we have our a little bit of ups and downs every 4 to 8 years. It can get a little whacked, but essentially, it's very stable. But yeah, for those of us who are professionals, we've been attracted for a particular reason.
Yeah, you've been attracted to the public service because that meeting or that
Mhm.
mission, of course, that gets ripped away a lot, and so having to kind of take that meaning or mission that you were seeking or had and applying it to a non-work situation is really the way to go because
Right.
you've it's a loss. It is a loss. You lost work. It's great. You retired, but that work part is gone. And a construct that you introduced in the book, The Retirement Collective, where I was introduced to you, is you call it the 3 R's. You reflect, regroup, and reap. So share with me that construct that you suggest for anyone in public service that's about to retire. How do they get ready and hopefully enjoy retirement?
It is absolutely essential that you enjoy retirement, right? I mean, stuff happens, right? But you can envision and prepare yourself for a whole different way of spending your time, right? Um, I I think that when we think about why we went into public service, right? So there's that. I was explaining my own reasons and so on. Say the environment is very, very important to you. Well, um, what can you take in your federal job that is ethics considerations included into the private sector? Is there a board that you might serve on, or just a more hands-on kind of volunteering? Um, and also reflecting about the friendships that you are will try hard to take into retirement, and sometimes people do, and you've got to be conscious of that. You've got to well, plan, think about it, right? Perhaps you develop a common interest with someone who you happen to work with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quilting comes to mind, right? And take that into retirement. So that reflecting, I also think it's really important. Of course, this is the librarian in me, right? To document what you've done. People can use it or not, but to leave in an orderly fashion. Don't just throw up your hands if you've had a nasty day or week or even a month, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right on. If you're trying to move forward into retirement, well, you're moving forward from somewhere, and so reflecting back and kind of where you have been and where you got you there might give you an idea of okay, these are the things that attracted me to the public service arena, and let's regroup. Now I've got this kind of demarcation line. How can I
Right,
take those positives and move that into
right,
personal life or the private sector? And of course, the reaping part is you get to enjoy those missions and values that you have with a lot more time that you control,
right,
more freedom.
right,
There's no one telling you this is the policy you've got to pursue because of the politics behind it, whatever that may be. You've got that ability yourself
right.
with more freedom. Now, you said you've been retired now for 18 months. I'd say you're into retirement, maybe over the beginning part. Tell me about how did it feel that first week or so, maybe a month into it, and how about a year into it?
Oh, let's see. The first week was just sort of looking around, and despite the plans, thinking, wow, I can do what I want in the order that I want, right? Even those mundane things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not have to rush into the kitchen to unload the dishwasher. I could even do that in at a leisurely pace, which let me tell you, that feels good.
Mm-hmm. I bet.
Maybe I should get out more. But and then one of the things I found, which surprised me, was that I valued my time even more. I suppose because I had so much flexibility, right? I mean, I took meetings, I took classes. I mean, there were times that I needed to show up, right? Gave workshops and so on. But generally, it was I structured my days, and um, just if I thought it was going to be a kind of a creative kind of thing, then I would have these beautiful blocks of time, right? And the flexibility to meet my new friends at for coffee and so on.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like that first week you had that freedom of choice, and then about a month later you realize the freedom of time. Uh, Now you're into it. It's been 18 months. How does it feel right now to be retired?
Even better, although I shouldn't say although, and I still have that thing about valuing my time,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I have a Zoom scheduled with, say just to get acquainted kind of Zoom with some other coach or something like that, and it doesn't come off, I feel a little bit miffed, right? Because I geared up, I wore decent clothes and so on and so forth. And it's like, wait a second, I could have been
Right?
right, whatever. So that's interesting. Another thing is, let's see, how do I put this into good words? The opportunity to be outside more. I mean, it's really important for human beings to be outside and in the sun. I mean, obviously in moderation, if you sunburn and so on. Also, and I'm not sure if we'll cover this later, but I want to make sure to say it. Don't assume that you're going to go back in part-time into your old job on contract, right? Many feds do that, right? But stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Even if your boss and the boss's boss desperately want you to come back to mentor, to finish projects and so on, stuff happens, right?
Yeah, stuff happens on their side or even your side. You might say, I thought about this beforehand, but I hit retirement and I don't want to step into another office again. That's and that's
Oh,
all right.
yes, I know what I was trying to think of. I thought that it would be easier for people to retire because we were staying home so much already,
Hmm.
working from home. And I I think that was probably so. Um, because we weren't used to the day-to-day, interacting every day face to face and so on, right? Um, I I have a friend who I informally coached some years ago, right? And an SES, Senior Executive Service,
Okay. Yep.
high-ranking woman, and she had her date of retirement, and she liked her work very much. She was fabulous at it. She had her date of retirement, but she did not know what she was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that was the kernel of where I'm winding up, at least for now. And we had some sessions with, thinking about, well, okay, what are you going to use your considerable energy and intelligence and just capabilities? And she turned out doing, whatever, certain things. But here's the what surprised me the most. She was concerned that she would lose her book reading time
Hmm.
because that was on the subway.
Ah, right.
Her daily commute was,
Yep.
perhaps 45 minutes. And this was not a librarian, let me just say.
Sure.
She was a high-ranking admin person. Um, but we spent a session talking about how she would carve out her time to do the thing that she really wanted to do, which was read more books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though her husband had retired before she did, and she thought she would lose that time.
Yep. Like I said, you
That
got to be
that's the
conscious
best part.
about choosing what you do with your time and choosing how you
Right, right.
go about that. Well, I got one more question for you, Susan. Before that, tell us what's the best way to reach out to you.
Oh, LinkedIn is a great way. I'm on there as Susan Hawk Schneider, hence the, including the Hawk part. I don't yet have a company page for Anhinga Coaching, but I should have one of those up within a week or so. Um, I usually say, I don't coach anhingas. They're water birds. They know what they're doing. They're very good at catching fish. I just love them, and I thought it was a cool word, so I chose that for
Yep.
my coaching. Thank you for mentioning that.
You got it. And I'll put that link to your LinkedIn. That's how we got
Right.
introduced to each other. I'll put that in the show notes, the description
Thank you.
for you there. All right. Final question for you, Susan. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is ready to clean.
You said clean, right?
Yes, you got it. Yep.
I can I have a really it is so whacked and very clean.
There you go.
I once saved up an entire winter's dryer lint,
Okay.
right? You know that
Yep.
stuff, right? And put it out in the spring for the birds, right?
Ah, all
Right.
right.
Glommed it onto the tree bark. They were not even interested in the slightest, and it made a huge mess when it rained running down the trunk.
You thought you're helping. Well, I see where you got the Anhinga name, that you like the water
Yeah.
birds. You're trying to be helpful to the birds, but a worthwhile experiment, I suppose.
Life is funny and fun.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Good. Well, thanks for coming on, Susan, sharing with us a bit, especially around the 3 R's of reflecting, regrouping, reaping the rewards, and what life has been like as a public servant, someone that was in the federal service, now into retirement.
Thanks. Take care of yourself
That's the
and good
that's the
luck.
plan. Yes,
Yes,
same to
yeah,
you.
you were right.
Yeah.
Those spreadsheets, they'll help.
Yeah, that's a part of it. That's a part of it. The
It
collages are
is.
helpful as well
It
too.
is.
It's great.
It
Awesome.
is.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
listening to the Retirement Reveal podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you'll feel better about your money and you'll make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil, owner of Keil Financial Partners. And if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, make sure to go to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.